Great to be here on this Thursday. I'm Kevin Thomas. He is BJ Bennett. Glad you were with us here on the show. So much to get to. It is a college football game day. BJ, I know you're excited about that. We'll get into a number of games coming up tonight. Tennessee opening on Thursday night. Ohio State playing on the opening Thursday night. So some big games out there. We'll get to those coming up a little bit later on the show. We'll hear from Jason Foster, former Walter Payton Award winner in 2007 from Georgia Southern. We'll talk some football with him. Also, Brandon Sudge of the Macon Telegraph will join us. We'll look at Georgia and Clemson upcoming. Sean Quinn, head coach of the Savannah State Tigers, will join us. We'll talk about their opener against a certain college that shall not be named just yet, BJ Bennett. I think we all know who it is. We'll get to that. Coming up with him in the final hour, Mike Griffith of Dog Nation will join us as he will each week throughout the fall, talking Georgia football in the final hour. So plenty to get to here on the show, including college football headlines, Florida State, Notre Dame coming up on Sunday night, BJ. And you knew they were going to. I mean, you saw Samford saying they were going to wear Bobby Bowden patches on their uniform, and you knew Florida State was going to announce something at some point, and they are going to be, it is going to be Bobby Bowden Field, almost literally. They're at Doak Campbell Stadium. BJ, they're going to have, I think, some Bobby Bowden signage over where the team runs out. Bobby Bowden, kind of signatures on the field. Opposite the ACC logo, we're going to have not one but two patches on the uniforms all season long. So really going in and all out to honor what is certainly their most legendary head football coach.
Yeah, it should be very special. And you think about Bobby Bowden, all that he accomplished on the field, off the field. You think about his legacy, his impact, his influence, and he is Florida State football. When you think about the history of the program and you think about all the things, again, that he accomplished. So, yeah, have seen, you can, see on social media the jerseys and the renderings of what they're going to have Doak Campbell Stadium look like. So should be a very special scene honoring, remembering Bobby Bowden and all he's meant to that university and to college football overall.
And you see this other news coming out of Tallahassee, BJ. You see this a lot of times in college football, and some people say, well, they're really undecided. And maybe you're playing some, cat and mouse games with Notre Dame, but this is Mike Norvell where you need as much positive momentum as well. And he said about the starting quarterback job, quote, "We'll see who the starter is when he runs out there on Sunday night." Who do you think it's going to be? And if you're a Florida State fan, does that make you feel good about you've had all spring and now all fall, and you still can't, at least publicly, commit to who's going to be your starting quarterback?
Yeah, my guess would be this is a little bit of kind of gamesmanship to not that Notre Dame's not prepared, but to kind of just keep Notre Dame from knowing. You have a couple of different options. Of course, everybody knows about McKenzie Milton, who had great success at UCF, broke all kinds of records, technically won a national championship per the NCAA, had the horrible leg injury, and has been away from football for 2 years. And when healthy, he's probably one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I think there's a little bit of an element of the unknown just because he hasn't played in a couple of years, but incredible. His story and his playmaking resume speaks for itself. And then you have Jordan Travis, who was Florida State's quarterback last year. And the Seminoles were kind of limited with what they could do a year ago, but I thought he had some pretty impressive performances. I thought he played well given the circumstances. My guess would be, Kevin, you see both guys. I think that Florida State will probably play two quarterbacks, and maybe that keeps Notre Dame off balance. That's a lot defensively that you have to prepare for. And Milton and Travis do similar things but different things. So I don't know that I would view this as Florida State doesn't know who its quarterback is 2 days, 3 days out from the game, or they don't know what the rotation is going to look like. I think they know, and they've prepared for that, and they're just kind of keeping it secret, so to speak. I guess to keep Notre Dame waiting. And if you're Notre Dame, I mean, that is a pretty big deal. Like, who are you preparing for? And I'm sure they've prepared relentlessly for both, but I think Florida State's trying to kind of keep the element of surprise there. But my guess would be Sunday night in Tallahassee, you see both McKenzie Milton and Jordan Travis.
And this is kind of the new age, I guess, we're entering into with college football, where you just don't say anything, right? I mean, when you talk about the depth chart, I know Jeff Collins, Georgia Tech, he does the above the line where it's like these are just the guys that are going to play. It's not necessarily the depth chart. Florida State now obviously not announcing the starting quarterback. I actually want to say NC State, if you remember this, they're playing tonight against South Florida. This was a thing. South Florida said, we're not even putting out a depth chart. And NC State says, well, if they're not doing it, we're not doing it. In fact, we're not going to put one out the entirety of the season. So no longer going to do a depth chart, apparently, at NC State. I think Dave Doran had some really interesting things to say about it. Here's what he had to say. And when he's fired up like that, BJ, it is, kind of the age of where we're going in college football. But yeah, apparently depth charts now might become a thing of the past in terms of getting the official release before college football, because a lot of teams are not a lot, but you're starting to see it grow that way where teams are simply putting out a list of players who are going to play and or not now saying they're going to put out not going to put out a depth chart for the media to consume and fans, etc.
Yeah, and I think that is becoming more commonplace where a depth chart is kind of something now you see on a website, a blog or a beat reporter puts out. You don't always get the depth chart from the school. And then when you do, sometimes it has situations like what Florida State has at quarterback right now, where it says McKenzie Milton or Jordan Travis as the first team quarterback. And you have seen a lot of that. And I mean, understandably so. It's week one. It's the preseason. Maybe there are literally positions where the rotational kind of share has not been fully established yet. So I'll buy that. But going back to the to the Florida State game against Notre Dame, I think Notre Dame has the transfer quarterback in from Wisconsin. Florida State's probably going to play both, and I would expect, at least at this point, a couple of days out, to see kind of equal reps. I think you'll see some McKenzie Milton, some Jordan Travis. You're probably going to have to score a little bit. Notre Dame has one of the best offenses in the country. Kyron Williams back at running back, a very good offensive line. But, yeah, interesting because throughout the offseason, that's been one of the more high-profile quarterback competitions at Florida State. And now we're in September, and at least as of the 2nd, there is not an answer yet.
Yeah, and again, he's got a couple more days, and we'll find out what's going to happen there on Sunday night. Other news and notes around college football. We'll find out more about this as we can throughout the show. But Georgia head athletic trainer Ron Corson testing positive for COVID. And under SEC rules, asymptomatic players do not have to quarantine after an exposure. Georgia, approximately 90% vaccination rate. Obviously, you don't know who the other 10% are among that team. And people say, what's the trainer? Well, the trainer, I don't know if it's, and this is probably the different rub, it's not necessarily the head athletic trainer, but the trainers have daily interaction with all the players, right? You go in for pre-practice treatment, post-practice treatment, tape jobs, all that kind of stuff to get you ready for practice or playing. You're going to have interaction with your trainers. Maybe not necessarily the head athletic trainer, but he's certainly around the team. So I'm sure they're doing contact tracing, et cetera, ahead of the Clemson game on Saturday. We'll just have to wait and see what, if anything, comes of this.
And you wish Ron the best, but COVID's going to be a reality with college football as it is everywhere else, moving forward. And we've seen the policies, but I think testing is going to be very important. I think the daily updates in terms of the test results going to be very important. But I think you're going to see COVID continue to be in the headlines, and you hope for the best. But I think constant testing will help provide clarity as we move forward into the season.
So there's just some news and note situations there. And again, we'll see if anything comes of it ahead of the game with Clemson. And again, I think, I don't know how they're doing it for cross-conference games, but I think obviously there's teams are doing testing and they'll have some kind of eligibility situation before they get to this game coming up on Saturday night as far as who's going to be out and who potentially will be available, which, again, I think it's going to be a wait and see with Georgia if anybody has to miss the game coming up on Saturday night. We've got so much to get to here in this first hour. Again, a lot of thoughts from JT Daniels, Kirby Smart, Mark Richt heading into the season. We'll give you some of their quotes. Brandon Sudge of the Macon Telegraph will join us. We're talking Georgia Clemson with him coming up in about 20 minutes here on the show as well. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube page. You can catch us here on 3 and Out each and every day as well. We'll come back with more, taking a dog's perspective heading into the season, and a lot of hype and talk, BJ, about Georgia and that national championship, the national championship run here in 2021. We'll get to that next here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you are with us. Brandon Sudd's going to join us in about 15 minutes here on the program. We're talking Georgia and Clemson, but a lot of folks talking about the national championship drive here in 2021. BJ Kirby Smart talking about the national. I asked him about the national championship expectation. If it's not coming on us with the expectation, then what are we doing? I look at it from the perspective of winning. I look at it from the perspective of what's important now. What are we doing now? And I know all the people in the organization, the administration, people in the state, people that love Georgia, the energy, enthusiasm have, it's just a long overdue. I don't care if you won one a year ago, it's overdue. So that's the end game. That's the goal. That's what you're trying to work towards.
Yeah, and you think about Kirby Smart and Georgia football, you think about pressure as a privilege, and I think you embrace the expectations. We've watched Georgia, and by Georgia, I mean Kirby Smart, the players, even, media fans talk about national championship football and what it'll take to get there this entire offseason, this entire preseason. And I think that is the expectation when you're at the University of Georgia. And the Bulldogs have been right there. I know it's incredibly disappointing to lose a game in the national championship the way Georgia did, but you played Alabama in a recent national championship game, and you did not trail in regulation. And it took one of the greatest plays ever for you to lose in overtime. So I think Georgia has shown that it can be right there at a championship level. But what's the difference between being right there at the championship level and kind of getting over the hump and breaking that stretch of history where you do have a national championship? That's a hard question to answer. And I don't know that there's a simple, straightforward answer where it's, if you do this, you'll win the national championship. I think as a program, all you can do is sort of put yourself in position to contend, to compete. And sometimes it's a play here or there. Sometimes it's a matchup in the postseason. Sometimes it's, a perfect throw, maybe the greatest throw we've seen on that stage. So I very much, Kevin, think Georgia is one of the teams that can win the national championship. They've shown that, even coming out of the SEC, where you have challenges seemingly every week, and even in a season where you're probably going to have to beat one of Clemson or Alabama, we presume, to get into the college football playoff. I think Georgia can do that. I think that should be the expectation, and I think Kirby Smart's right when he talks about it.
Look, I think Mark Richt kind of said something similar. He was asked on how Georgia can end the drought. He said, look, you just win the game that you need to win to get in, I guess. He says, it's not rocket science. If you get to that game, the one that gets you in, you've got to win it. That's just how it goes. I'm sure they're doing all the right things, but just because you're doing all the right things doesn't mean you're going to win. Georgia was in the playoff. They were on the verge of winning a national championship. I don't think they did anything wrong. It just got away from it. I think that's, to me, part of it. And to me, kind of the perfect, not the perfect parallel, but a parallel of that would be Mark Few at Gonzaga, right? Maybe a little different because you're not a major program, but you've been Sweet 16. And people are like, why can't Mark Few advance? Then he gets to the Elite Eight. Why can't they get into the Final Four? Then he gets to the Final Four. What's it going to take to get Gonzaga to win a national championship? Then they got there last year, and everybody going into that game is like, Gonzaga is going to beat Baylor, and it just didn't happen. Does that mean Mark Few has got the program on the wrong trajectory and he doesn't know what he's doing? No, I think it's a process, and I think for Kirby Smart, he talked about it, and I think Mark Richt talked about it. Look, how many times in Mark Richt's career can fans now go back and look at and say, yeah, you had the team to do it. Just as he said, the one game you really needed to win to make sure you do it, it just got away from you, and you didn't do it. And that's the difference. You've said this a number of times. The difference between being a great team and winning the national championship is awfully thin. And people get very upset at the awfully thin, that thin margin, that they forget to say, look, it's a national contender. BJ, I'm a firm believer of this. If your goal is, hey, we're going to win the national championship, and that's what we're out to do. If you're dissatisfied with coming close and being keep being in that position, and I firmly believe you're going to get one, right? I mean, it's one of those things. I know people talked about Bobby Bowden in Florida State. Hey, look, you're there. Why can't you get through? And it's like, just be patient. You're finally going to get it. And he did. I think there's a number of programs you can look at. It's like, keep putting yourself in a position to do it, which is what Kirby Smart's trying to do. And I think eventually it's going to break for you. Why? Because you're comfortable being in those games. You know what it takes to get there. It's a play or two. And as you said, if Tua is a little more inaccurate with one pass, and he was having a heck of a second half, but if he's a little more inaccurate with one pass, nobody's even talking about this. Now, and again, and that's as simple as boiling it down to one play. So I think if I'm a Georgia fan, you got to stop with the when is it going to be? Look, keep putting yourself in a position to win. I'm sure you would much rather be here than Tennessee going, we want to win a national championship too, but it's a long ways away from where they're going to have to build this program. Keep putting yourself in that spot. And I think eventually it's going to happen because you will win that one game you need to win to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think, some aspects of winning a national championship can be circumstantial, can kind of depend on things that are largely outside of your control. I mean, I know you could go back to the Tua throw and say, well, if maybe we're in a different coverage or if you got to him with a pass rush. But to your point, I mean, think about this. If that pass is 6 inches, a foot longer, and it's an incompletion, you're talking about a Georgia national championship and all of the things that we're saying right now. Georgia can't win the big game. Can Kirby Smart ever get them over the hump? When is history going to change? You're not saying any of that because of a throw from Tua being a little bit off the mark. So Georgia played themselves in that season into national championship relevancy. And once you get to that point, it can be a play here or there that really might even just be beyond your control. And think about some of the national championship games we've seen over the last 10, 15 years. That 2017 Alabama team is one of the best we've seen. So you could make an argument that just by the eye test, leading Alabama for all of regulation and losing on the final play might be a more impressive performance than some of the winning championship game performances we've seen because of who you were playing. And that's not making an excuse. I certainly understand the desire and the burning desire to win a national championship. But I think sometimes when we say, Georgia can't win the big one, we're not realizing that Georgia has put itself in position to be a part of these games we call big ones. The Rose Bowl, the SEC Championship, the College Football Playoff, the National Championship game, what we're going to see on Saturday. And I mean, even we've talked about this with Ben. Georgia lost one game in 2002. They lost it by one play that, Ben had the game winner over Thomas Davis in the end zone. If there was a College Football Playoff in 2002, Georgia would have been the 2 or 3 seed. Probably the 3 seed, and they would have had a very good chance with David Green and Terrence Edwards and all those great defenders to win a national championship. So I think there's a difference, like you said, in being one of those teams that can win a national championship and kind of having frustrations that you haven't, I guess, realized your full potential and being everybody else. Because we've heard national pundits say this, you've talked about it. There maybe are 8 or 9 teams that can win a national championship. And I mean every season, kind of consistently. Maybe 6 or 7, maybe it's less than that. But whatever the number is, Georgia is one of them. Georgia is one of those programs. And that's why the anticipation is so incredibly high for Saturday. That's why, we're talking about a game, Georgia and Clemson, in early September that has playoff implications. It's going to be 85 degrees outside, and we're talking about, the new calendar year. Will Georgia be playing in the college football playoff? So I understand the frustration, but I also think all you can kind of do is put yourself in position. If you're a coach, if you're on the coaching staff, even if you're players. And, it's the old argument I used a couple of weeks ago when we had this discussion, Kevin. It's if you want to really simplify it to one play. All right. A team's in the national championship. They're down by 1. They have a field goal to try to win it. So if the field goal is off by a couple of inches, that program can't win the big one. That coach doesn't know what he's doing. Those players aren't clutch. If the field goal is good, and maybe it's even a wobbly kick that goes through, that coach is brilliant. This program broke through. So I don't think there's some mysterious kind of barrier preventing Georgia from winning a national championship. You've been there, and you use the Florida State and the Bobby Bowden parallel. Sometimes it just takes time, especially when you have 2 programs in Alabama and Clemson dominating the landscape.
Yeah, certainly. And again, another quick quote from JT Daniels. I think this is kind of funny just because of obviously the area of the world we live in. And, you watch SEC Network, it just means more. You got, Luke Combs singing songs all about every single team in the SEC, and we're going to put some South on you and all that kind of stuff. And JT Daniels talked about coming to Georgia the first time. He's like, seeing all the Georgia Bulldog flags flying everywhere to experience what it's like for football to be such a main focal point. Loved it ever since I got here. Football is just another thing on the West Coast versus football being the thing here. Hashtag it just means more. That's all he was trying to say, right? It just means more.
It does. It does. The passion, the enthusiasm, the anticipation, the excitement is off the charts. It's incredible. Now, I wonder how much of a distraction sometimes that can become during the season. I mean, Kevin, because think about it. We've talked about this. There's obviously college football is so special. You know, the SEC fan bases are so incredible and passionate. But, you know, think about it like this. If Georgia loses to Clemson, loses to a top 5 team that has made 6 straight college football playoff appearances in week 1 with a dozen games still to come, we're going to say, oh, well, see, I told you Georgia was overrated. Georgia couldn't do it. When in reality, if you lose to a top 5 team, that happens. I mean, Clemson lost to Ohio State. You see Alabama lose sometimes, rarely, but sometimes on the big stage. I mean, you see LSU, you see Ohio State, you see Oregon, you see, Florida, everybody lose on the big stage. So I'm not trying to apologize for Georgia in advance. There's a very real chance they win this game on Saturday. But to all the talk about the passion and the excitement, I mean, I'll ask you, based on the fans you've talked to, if Georgia loses, how negative will the reaction be if they lose to Clemson in week 1?
I think it'll be the fashion in which they lose will determine the reaction. If it's a field goal game that happens, like you said, with 30 seconds left, I think a lot of people will say what we've been saying all offseason. If they lose, it doesn't change anything. You still got to win the East. You still got to get to the SEC championship game. And if you do that, you're playing for a chance to go to the playoffs. That's the reality of the situation, right? I mean, and so now if it's 14, 17 points, which I'm not seeing that happening, but if it is, I think there will be other questions that get opened up depending on how it plays out. So I think to answer that before we've seen these teams play a game is kind of hard, but I do think it's going to be how you lose will determine the reaction. Because if it's 14, 17 points, I think people will say, is this a team that's going to go undefeated in the SEC playing like that against a top opponent? Versus if it's late, you say, hey, one play, it's probably a different story. Nothing has changed. Win the SEC, and you're in the college football playoff. I think the overreaction in a close loss will be largely like pseudo positive.
Kev, think about this though. Teams lose and win the national championship. I mean, this is something we always talk about with Ben. The University of Florida, who has 2 national championships over the last 20 years and 3 over the last 25 years, they've never had an undefeated season. The Florida Gators, with all the great teams and, one of the, great programs in college football history, they've never had an undefeated season. LSU won a national title with 2 losses. So I think you're talking about a big game, yes. A game that's going to tell us a lot, yes. A barometer game, yes. But I don't think it has to be viewed as the end-all, be-all the first week of the season.
We'll come back. We'll ask our next guest some of those questions when we return. Brandon Sudge, Macon Telegraph, will join us when we return here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett here on 3 and Out. Georgia and Clemson just a couple of days away, and joining us here to help us break it all down from the Macon Telegraph, Brandon Sudge joins us. Brandon, welcome. How are you?
Hey, y'all. Thank y'all for having me on.
Hey, appreciate you coming on. Obviously, a lot of news about Ron Corson, head athletic trainer, testing positive for COVID. Obviously, the trainers are around the football players. What can you tell us about that? And is there any degree of concern about the level of contact tracing there? Do they feel it'll be all right come Saturday?
So I think it's too early to kind of tell whether there's too much concern about it. I think the one thing that Georgia has in its favor is the fact that it is 90% vaccinated at the least. So based on the fact that vaccinations are so high, so I believe that the team doesn't have to do as much contact tracing unless somebody is showing symptoms. So if a player is vaccinated and they're not having any symptoms, then they should be okay. So it's definitely unfortunate that it happened, but I'm not sure that it'll affect anything on Saturday.
Brandon, a couple of different perspectives on some Georgia fans, some media who are saying this is a statement game. You're playing Clemson. You're playing a team that's made 6 straight playoff appearances. You need to win to be affirmed as kind of a national name. And you have others who are saying, well, look, it's a top 5 game, but if you lose, you can still win out and make the playoff. Is this a statement game to you, or is this a game that, while big, isn't necessarily going to determine Georgia's season?
It's exactly what you just said. It's a big game. It's a game of powerhouse team against powerhouse team. But it's something that we've heard from Kirby Smart, and we've heard from a couple of other guys this week. It's week 1 of the season. There are 11 games after this. Both teams are probably going to be in their conference title games. So it's going to come down to the end rather than what happened here to start. However, I do understand what people are saying in terms of it being a statement game. I mean, it obviously has a huge effect on confidence. It has a huge effect on how the team can improve at this point. But I think, so let's say the game is over and either team wins by, let's say, a touchdown or less. Both those teams are going to come out of that stadium having confidence about themselves because their schedule the rest of the way is not that difficult. So, like on Georgia's end, do I think that a win helps them? Yes, but does a loss hurt them too much? No, because it's going to come down to the end. It's going to come down to the SEC title game. So that's just kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Brandon Sudge, Macon Telegraph, joining us here on 3 and Out. And Brandon, how do you think here now, a couple of days out, Georgia's looking to attack Clemson in this ball game from an offensive standpoint? You look at what Clemson has up front, 2 deep that rivals pretty much anybody in college football with the level of talent they have there. Is this try to come out and establish that early with the run, or how do you think Georgia's looking to attack this Clemson defense?
So I think it can be a little bit of that. I think Georgia can always say, hey, like us as an offense, we pride ourselves on wearing an opponent down, all of that. But at the same time, I think Georgia fans are going to see a different type of offense going into this year. I mean, we had a year where all of us saw Todd Monken and the job he can do, but if you think about it, that's in a pandemic-shortened year. There wasn't as much time to build anything with him and Daniels. And now I think that they've had a full offseason to kind of get everything under wraps. I feel like Georgia will use its passing game in ways that we haven't seen in years. So I think in terms of the opening game, I feel like Georgia will be able to get its playmakers out in space, and that's how they're going to have that's how they're going to have success offensively.
A lot of talk about Georgia's offensive line, Brandon, and you think about, the injury to Warren Erickson. You think about Sawyer and kind of moving positions. Clemson's defense, as Kevin mentioned, that defensive front as good as it gets. Do you think Georgia's offensive line can consistently move the line of scrimmage against this Clemson front?
I do. I do feel like that Georgia's offensive line with Erickson expected to be back, I feel like they still have that experience up there. And obviously in a game like this, it comes down to the line of scrimmages. It comes down to who's going to beat who up front. And I think Georgia has a little bit of an edge offensively, but they have more of an edge on the other side. I feel like Georgia's defensive line can absolutely shut down Clemson's rushing attack, and they can make the Tigers not totally a one-dimensional offense, but more one-dimensional than they would like. So I feel like Georgia has an advantage at the line of scrimmage on each end.
And Brandon, I was going to kind of follow up as you flip it over. You're facing a quarterback that you're obviously not going to see too much of down the rest of the way. A big 240, 50-pound quarterback. Is the goal just to keep him in the pocket, at the very least, not let him get outside and become a pseudo running back at times in this offense?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate, but I feel like the thing that Georgia has to its advantage is the fact that they're not facing a Trevor Lawrence with all this experience. This is a guy who beat Boston College by a touchdown last year, who lost to Notre Dame. So I feel like there might be some. So let's just say that the nerves on his end might be a little bit more than, say, Daniels, who played, I guess, half a year last year. He's got a little bit more experience in Georgia's offense. But, yeah, I do feel like Ungale, I don't quite know how to say his name, but I feel like he will be able to have success in the passing game, but can Georgia kind of contain the likes of a Justin Ross and all their playmakers while trying to keep him in the pocket? And if they do that, I feel like Georgia will find itself in a favorable spot by the end of the game.
Brandon, in your mind, so many players that have professional potential, preseason All-Americans all over the place, teams that are similar in some respects. What's the biggest key to victory for the Dogs?
Obviously the cop-out answer here is either special teams or the line of scrimmage. Everybody is going to say, like in a huge game, it'll come down to special teams and who can make this type of plays. But I would say for me, it's Georgia being able to find that balance in their offense, being able to not only run versus pass, but being able to kind of change it up in the pass game and get those intermediate passes, those deep passes, and then those drop-off passes to the likes of a James Cook or someone like that.
Brandon Sudge, our guest here from the Macon Telegraph. Brandon, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Brandon Sudge joining us here on 3 and Out as Georgia Clemson. Your thoughts there, BJ? I think he's kind of nailed it there. Line of scrimmage. He said he thinks Georgia got the advantage, though, when they're on defense over attacking that Clemson's offense. Where do you kind of sit on that take?
Huge test. I do think Clemson has the best defensive front in college football. I think we had a guest on this week that said they have, 6 defensive ends alone that have started games. And then you think about Brian Brzee along the interior of the defensive line, who is an All-American as a true freshman. Big pressure spot for the Dogs' offensive line. But, yeah, I agree with Brandon. I think it's a very good group. I think Warren McClendon is a very good player. I think Jamari Sawyer has the versatility. I think Warren Erickson being healthy potentially is very good news. I do think Georgia will have to establish the line, though. And because of that, and Kevin, we've said this for a couple of weeks, I sort of think the anticipation of Georgia coming in and JT Daniels throwing it 45 times, I don't see that, because I think early on Saturday night, you're going to want to try to set a physical tone and try to kind of get Clemson's defensive line on its heels a little bit. And in theory, at least, I know this is easier said than done, but in theory, you don't always do that coming out throwing the football. You get your offensive line in a rhythm and kind of take control of the trenches by running the football. So, yes, I agree. I have faith in Georgia's offensive line. I think it's a really good group. This is the toughest matchup you can have in college football. Look, you could win less than half of your battles and still have a very good effort Saturday night because of who you're going up against. But I'm excited for that matchup. I think Christian has said he watches football games at the line of scrimmage, doesn't always watch the quarterback. I think Saturday night's a great night to do that in this game.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Jason Foster joins us next hour. We talk some Georgia Southern football with him. Also, Mike Griffith, Dog Nation, will join us in the final hour of the program, as will Sean Quinn, head football coach at Savannah State. We'll talk about their opener against Valdosta State coming up this weekend as well. This is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. I know BJ is all geeked about Thursday night football. I mean, you got some big names in action tonight. You got Tennessee, Ohio State, number 4 in action tonight. NC State, UCF won't exchange depth charts. They're getting all into it there. Boise State, Central Florida, another one tonight on Thursday night. So some a good one. East Carolina, App State's an interesting one here on Thursday night. But before we get to all that here in hour number 2, BJ, 8 runs in 3 games against the Dodgers, not going to get it done. You get swept by the Dodgers. Even that being said, into the 8th inning, had a chance to win the last 2, couldn't close the deal.
Well, I kind of just want to sit back here and sort of let you provide some perspective because, yes, it's frustrating to be swept by the Dodgers. Not ideal. I think you're at 2 games, and I think Philly's playing right now in the first game of a doubleheader. But offensively, you weren't great, and it didn't have, Ozzie there at the end. But where are you with Brian Snitker and sort of the bullpen usage? Because there's been a lot of frustration, I think, from fans, and some of that's in hindsight. It's easy to say you shouldn't have put Chris Martin in or shouldn't have left Luke in or should have brought Matzik out when it goes the way it goes. And I think in the show meeting we were even referencing bullpens give up runs. It happens. So if your mindset is you're never going to give up a run, you're not going to be happy, especially in a 3-game series where you score 8 runs. But in your mind, where are you with kind of the bullpen identity and rotation at this point?
Well, look, I'm not as upset about the bullpen. I mean, I know the Dodgers they're a tough team. You didn't score enough runs if you're going to beat a team like that. People are yelling about Matzik here and there. I mean, look, was Matzik going to go the rest of the season without giving up a run? I don't think so. Obviously, where my frustration lies with the bullpen. Less Will Smith. I still don't understand why Richard Rodriguez has not been given an opportunity in the 9th inning just to see what happens in a high leverage situation. He's gotten some high leverage situations in the 6th and 7th inning, but this is a guy that was a closer. Give him a shot. It's obvious. Again, Will Smith just makes it too close for comfort night in, night out. I think the rest of it is, look, Chris Martin, a guy who's been okay. You bring in a high leverage situation and, he missed it with a couple of pitches in a few at bats to allow guys to get on base. But look, these are difficult hitters. You can't just groove stuff against the Dodgers. They're not going to mess around with that. So, look, I don't fault Snitker to a just a T on this series. I think offensively, 8 runs in 3 games against the Dodgers is not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it in the postseason, and it's certainly not going to cut it now. So I think from my standpoint, your pitching was okay for the most part. Drew Smiley's wasn't. Your bullpen let a few hits get away at some inopportune times, but by and large, they've pitched very well for the last month. I think the byproduct is you had a couple of 1-run games late. You weren't able to make it hold up, and you just did not score enough runs to beat a good team like that. Plain and simple. I think it'd be one thing if it was what's about to happen now where you're playing Colorado and you give and maybe Colorado's a different animal with the thin air, but it'd be one thing if you're blowing leads to Colorado. It's another to say, hey, man, the Dodgers just swept us. Well, how many runs you score? Well, man, we gave one guy 2 and we gave another guy 3. Was that not enough? No, not against that team. It's not. So I kind of put this series a little bit on the offense as much as I do some timely outings there from the bullpen that kind of came back around.
So where's your confidence level now and we'll see, might be, could be 3 games later today, but where's your confidence level right now up to in the East?
I still feel pretty good. I kind of equate this to what we were just talking about, BJ. It's like if Georgia goes to Clemson and loses, does that mean you're not confident anymore? Or did you just lose to a good team? Now, would I like to see the Braves win one? Yes. Do I like the fact that they got swept? No. But that's also probably the best team in the National League at the end of the day. The end, and you didn't score enough runs to help you win. Now, take those 3 games off the calendar. You now have 29 games left in the season, and 20 of those are against teams with losing records. I feel pretty good if this team can get it back on track, get the starting pitching they've been getting, that they're going to turn this thing around. Now, it's awfully close with Philadelphia, and you'll get a chance to go head-to-head with them. But get the offense back going again against some teams that, quite frankly, aren't as good as you. Probably aren't going to be as crisp with the pitching, aren't going to run out of dominant back into the bullpen the way the Dodgers did. You should see some dubs coming up. Your next few games, you got what? 4 with Colorado, the Nationals, and the Marlins. Time to eat, right? Time to eat if you're the Braves on these next 3 series, especially. We've got more to come. Take 3 around the corner. Jason Foster, former Georgia Southern Walter Payton Award winner, will join us next hour as well here on 3 and Out. Hour 2 of 3 and Out here on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. We'll look at some of the football that's on just tonight. And there's a lot of it, BJ, a lot of intriguing football on tonight around the college football world. Jason Foster will join us this hour as well. 2007, I should say. Walter Payton Award winner there at Georgia Southern. He'll join us in about 20 minutes here on the program. But BJ, it's 4 o'clock. Let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, hypothetically, I know we already had a take 3 question about weddings in the fall, but let's say hypothetically you had to go to one. Let's say it starts at 6 o'clock. Can you go to a college football game at noon and make it to a wedding that starts at 6 o'clock? Hypothetically speaking, if this were to potentially be a problem.
Well, I mean, is the college football game in Miami and the wedding in, Savannah? I mean, what?
I think the hypothetical situation that may be taking place would be the difference of about an hour. An hour from the game site to the wedding locale.
I think that's doable. I really do, because a college football game, barring overtime, and I guess that could be, quite the factor, but barring overtime, you're talking about 3 hours, 3.5 hours. If you're an hour away, now traffic is traffic, but traffic is going to be an issue wherever you're coming from, whatever time, whatever you're doing. So I don't know that you totally account for traffic, because A, you can't, and B, it's everywhere. So you kind of just view that as what it is. But let's say you get done, let's kind of split the difference, 3.5 hours. You get done at 3:15. You got to be at the wedding by 6. Now, this is an important question. The people that are going to the game, are they in the wedding?
No, would not be in the wedding.
So you are purely an attendee, so you can just show up, kind of slide in the back quietly. You don't necessarily have to be super dressed up, or you can just kind of slide in, drop the bowls off or the spoon set or whatever, and just kind of relax. I think it's doable. Yes, I think it's very, very doable, and I encourage whoever theoretically we're talking about to give it a try.
In this total hypothetical situation, a lot of this requires the game to kick off at noon as well. We'll have to see. In this hypothetical situation.
So we don't actually know if the game is kicking off at noon.
In this hypothetical situation, not presently.
Well, but there's a lot of speculation going on here.
We're not talking about me. This is a hypothetical situation. I, too, think it's doable. And I also think if you're a few minutes late to the nuptials, as long as you're not jumping in front of the bride to get to your seat because you're that kind of late, it's fine. And
not a big deal. Not a big deal.
I think if I saw you sneaking in, like, hey, bro, the wedding started at 6. What? I was here at 5:59. Why were you? Even if it's 6:05, if they haven't said the I do's yet, hey, saw you sneak in at 6:05. Oh, it's fine. I got hung up in traffic. The wedding's not going to start on time anyways. Weddings are like meetings. If the meeting's at 10 o'clock, it starts at like 10:10 because everybody's got to get their juice or their coffee or whatever. You're always waiting on Steve, who's like, hey, I was on the phone. I had to finish that phone call. Very important order was coming in. Can't make the meeting till going to start a few minutes late anyway. I think totally
purely hypothetical.
Moving along. Take 2 is Zeb Nolan, the now starting quarterback at South Carolina, the coolest story already of the college football season. The guy who was not on the team, he was a grad assistant. He's now going to start on Saturday for South Carolina. Oh, by the way, his real name is Zebula. I would go with Zeb also with that. But apparently he's named after an old mountain man that his parents knew in North Carolina. Like, okay, so you weren't on the team, now you're the starter, and you're named after, quote, an old mountain man that your dad knew back in the day. That's awesome.
Hey, who are you named after? You remember that old dude that like was always kind of on the horizon? We don't talk to him. We don't know. That's who. I'm named after him. But no, it really is something, Kevin. I mean, it almost feels like a movie because I can't think of another example of this. And maybe there are people listening going, oh, I remember this one time. But you were a grad assistant. Like you were a coach. You are a coach slash becoming a coach, and you are not on the football roster. You are not a part of the football roster. You did not come to South Carolina to play football. You came to South Carolina to coach football. Now, understand that this is not a guy that's never thrown a football, played at Iowa State, also played at North Dakota State. So he does have, big program experience. But the fact that in a couple of weeks, this went from here's a grad assistant to, hey, he may be getting some reps, keep an eye on him, but they're just using him to have an extra quarterback. You need to get some reps in practice to, hey, he's moving up the depth chart, at least getting some opportunities with the first two. He's starting. Zeb is starting. And I think you feel like South Carolina will be able to win game one. I think Eastern Illinois maybe, but how long can this go? I mean, you have to root for him. You have to pull for him. It's amazing. And his head's got to be spinning just with all of this, but it is a really cool story. It feels like a movie. I think Luke Doty, when healthy, is the starter there, but next man up. Sometimes you got to go to kind of different places to make it all work. So I think everybody's rooting for Zeb.
Kind of take two, part B here. After hearing the story of how Zeb got his name, what are the odds, and you could do it in terms of percentages, but what are the odds that Zebulaya might have possibly been involved in the White Lightning business? A little moonshine, a little Mountain Dew. An old mountain man named Zebulaya, I think he may have been familiar with a still or two. That's all I'm saying.
The Lightning? The White Lightning? Okay.
You've never heard it called White Lightning before?
I don't really know what you're talking, Kevin. I don't really know what you're talking about.
Moonshine.
Okay. I mean,
I think I'm going to say like at least 80% chance that Zebulaya probably made moonshine at some point.
Okay. Look, I will trust your judgment.
All right, moving along. I'd like to get Christian's thoughts on this because I feel like he would have a good gauge of this as well. Take three. How many or how much in terms of hours, as we've got football last night, tonight, all through the weekend, how much college football are you going to consume over the next 5 days?
I got to make a parallel here because listeners that have been with us a while remember our buddy Matt Oz. And Matt used to do this thing that it was kind of interesting to me. I think it just baffled you, Kevin, where he would get pre-sick. He would come in and say, "Hey, man, I'm feeling kind of, I'm gonna be sick in a couple of days," and we're like, "Oh, okay." And it would happen. I'm pre-exhausted, but because of what you have coming up, I'm excited, but I'm pre-exhausted because I know you look at tonight, you look at tomorrow night, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday with Ole Miss and Louisville kind of finishing it all up. I think that it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a whirlwind. And at the end of it, we're all going to be looking around going, now, what just happened? What in the world just happened? How do we process all of that? Because we've had months and months of anticipation, speculation, hype. This means this means that. And half of these games are going to go in a direction nobody's anticipating. I mean, I think Ohio State could lose tonight. So everything we think we know about college football, we're probably going to have to reset every 24 hours. But I'm watching all of it, and it's going to be special.
So do you think you hit the 24 hours of college football consumption? I say this because the next 5 days, there's only a possibility of 120 total hours of actual real life time. Do you think out of that 120, 24 of which, i.e. a whole day, will be spent consuming college football?
Without question.
Do you think you hit the 30-hour mark?
I mean, at that point, I'm kind of running into some issues. I mean, 24 is probably about the extent of my ability, but yeah, I'm going to be in it for the long haul.
There you go. I'm thinking probably because I have children that want to go outside from time to time. I'll probably hit the 12 to 18 range, and I won't get to watch Friday night because we're doing high school football. I'm not upset about that. I mean, we're doing high school football, so I don't get to consume on Friday nights the way some people do with college football. But yeah, certainly tonight, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, I'm all over. For the opening.
You got to run through your Saturday suggestion that you've already shared with people, where you have time for a nap, you have time to kind of doze off before the start of the night. You got to reset that for people.
Yeah, I really think you do the get the honey-do list. You come in for lunch, and you start watching the 12 o'clock games. You start watching and find you a good one to watch. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. This is the dice you roll at 12 o'clock. Then the 3:30 games start. You take you a nap then. And you go, what about the good? No. The 3:30 games start heating up about 5 o'clock, 5:30, getting that second half. So if you fall asleep during first half of some of those 3:30 games, you're fine. You wake up, you feel refreshed. You get to the end of the 3:30 games, you get you some dinner, you get you a little caffeine jolt or what have you going, and that really sets you up for the home stretch. Now, do I think you can, make it to the Hawaii trek? Some of the, Washington State games that are no, I still don't think I can do that. But could I guarantee that I make it to the end of Clemson, Georgia? Yes. Because I got to say, in my older age, running around with kids, man, you get to that 10:30, it's not so much that I'm tired, but like you can't sit down. If I stay standing up, I'm good. But if I sit down and God forbid, if I throw the legs out in the recliner, man, it gets iffy.
It's over. Ball game.
That's take 3. We do it each every day. This time we'll come back. Jason Foster, Georgia Southern legend, 2007 Walter Payton Award winner, will join us when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Georgia Southern opening up the season this Saturday against Gardner-Webb. And joining us here on the program, former Georgia Southern legend, 2007 Walter Payton Award winner, Jason Foster, joining us here on 3 and Out. Jason, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, appreciate you coming on, and I know a lot of folks excited about Georgia Southern getting back to full capacity there in Paulson this year, but speak to just the anxiety, excitement, what have you, before you're playing the first game of the season, whether it be against Gardner-Webb like they are this week or someone else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the atmosphere is going to be electrifying. I know fans are definitely ready to get back in the stadium. I'm sure the players are ready to play in front of fans at full capacity. So I can imagine the energy in the players. So I'm excited. I think the fans are excited. We're just ready for some football.
And Jason, you're going to see some young quarterbacks play this season, early this season in this game. You obviously one of the best to ever do it. When you're a young quarterback, when you're a young player, what's the biggest key to being successful out there?
I think the biggest key is got to be composed. This game's not going to go the way you think it is every time. There's going to be some ups and downs. But I think if they follow the game plan, and I'm sure Coach Lawrence for them have a great one for them, follow the game plan, hold on to the football, in the end, I think we got enough talent, all the games to turn out all right.
Jason Foster joining us here on 3 and Out. Now, I know in the first couple of games, you're going to be without what you thought was going to be your starter. Just speak to your first game coming in. You know you're going to have an inexperienced guy there at quarterback. Maybe you know the system, but just first game, what do you expect from a guy making maybe their first start? Or what was your first game like when you walked out there in the huddle? Was it nervous? Was it I got this? What do you think they'll be feeling come Saturday?
Oh, yeah. You'd definitely be nervous because you want to do everything right. Georgia Southern has a great history of quarterbacks, and I was with Shy Leadham last year, and, Justin's going to be out the first two games. You want to make sure you go in and compete and do the right thing, but I think you're going to have jitters at first. You might get a few play calls wrong, but after about a series or two, I think they'll be ready to rock and roll with whoever they go with.
You look at this schedule, and we've talked about this all offseason. You have Arkansas coming up. You have Louisiana, who's ranked in the preseason top 25. You have Coastal Carolina, who's ranked in the preseason top 25. You have App at the end of the year. Talk about this opportunity to play a national schedule and really step into the spotlight here right away.
Right. I think that was the reason to move up to 1A football. These are the games and the schedules you want. You want to be able to compete with the best. And I think this year definitely poses that challenge where, like you said, you got all these games. You play a lot of guys on the road. You're going to be on national TV a couple games. So I think from a organizational standpoint with Georgia Southern football, this is a great opportunity for us to showcase what we can do. And obviously it helps with recruiting as well.
Jason Foster joining us here on 3 and Out. Obviously, the 7th year in the Sun Belt. How have you seen this team transition? Obviously, from when you were playing up through the transition and now into the Sun Belt, where they sit 7 years into it. How have you kind of watched the transition take place, and what do you think of that transition now that they're kind of fully through it?
Right, we've done a great job of transition. I know you had your ups and downs and coaching changes, but overall, I think we've transitioned well. We've got the talent to come in. The stadium has been upgraded. The fans have been enjoyable. They're loving it too. So I think overall, we're kind of be the model citizens to show you how to upgrade or go up in classifications, so to speak. And I think the coaching staff is all in on it. And now I think it's just we just got to go out there and perform.
And you think about the history and tradition in Statesboro. Guys like you and AP, and you think about 6 national championships and all the big games, and now you're adding bowl games to that. I know Georgia Southern would love to, add a conference championship out of the Sun Belt. What's it like watching this tradition of a program that's still relatively young just continue to evolve and just add more and more history to a program that's already accomplished so much?
Right. Again, I think it's just opportunities knocking. Adding bowl games and bowl victories are going to be key. Winning some Sun Belt titles, getting back up to the top of that is another key for us. And I think once you do that, you can build on the legacy of Georgia Southern football. You keep stacking up trophies and wins. It's just better for everyone.
Jason Foster joining us here on 3 and Out. Obviously, you see Georgia Southern now going out against the likes of Arkansas, BYU coming to Paulson Stadium. I know Georgia Southern obviously really got a lot of notoriety off beating Florida. How do you think that helps develop a program? I know folks look at it a number of ways and say, look, those are games that are going to be tough to win consistently. How do you think, though, it helps develop a program when you go out and schedule those type of games pretty regularly on the schedule year to year?
Right. It's vital for programs that are up and coming. You know, since we moved up in classifications, I think from a player standpoint, you want to play against the best. And right now we can say we've done that. Even from years when we scheduled Alabama, we haven't played Georgia in a while, but this year we're playing like a lot of ranked teams. So I think the opportunity is, again, knocking for us. And when you do that, I think the excitement has to build around Statesboro in general. You always got a chance to knock off a big guy. And, you know, with the schedule we got and for the future, I think we're going to keep having these games. So we just got to get ready and be prepared for it.
Looking back over your record-setting career, Jason, what stands out when you look back on your time at Georgia Southern?
Man, I think we were close. We didn't win a championship when I was there, but I think we had some key times that we could have done it. I know kind of coaching changed a little bit from year to year, but I think overall, I think we did a great job and we set the tone and set the bar from a unit. The offense played well, defense played well, and we steadily got recruits in. So, and I look back as a great experience. You know, though we didn't accomplish what I set out to do or we set out to do, so to speak, but I think we left a legacy there and something for everyone to live up to.
So what's next for Georgia Southern, Jason? You think about, again, all that history and tradition, the opportunities on the schedule for this fall. As one of the great program players in program history, what do you think about when you think about Georgia Southern moving forward?
I think we need to be dominant of the Sun Belt. I think when you think about Sun Belt, I hope to get to the point where Georgia Southern names comes up first, kind of like when you thought about the SoCon and in 1AA football, it was Georgia Southern and everybody else. So once I think you secure the Sun Belt, you become a Sun Belt powerhouse. I think then you can move into the national spotlight of getting games, kind of like Coastal Carolina did last year. They capitalized on the opportunity. They won some big games. I'm sure they're going out to try to repeat it this year. But I think as Georgia Southern moves along, once you take the top of the Sun Belt, I think we can definitely be in the national mix and be mentioned in early preseason top 25. And once you get there, then the sky's the limit.
Jason Foster, Georgia Southern legend, joining us here on 3 Now. Now, Georgia Southern, if you look way down to the end of the season, they got Appalachian State the last game of the year. Is that something you'd like to see stick and play App State last every year?
You know what? I don't care when we play them. I'll be there excited, but I think it is a fitting end for the year. You can make the best of it, knock them out of the playoffs or whatever hunt they got going on, take the title out of them. They can do the same for us. So I think having them in a primetime game with such meaning on it and all the marbles on the line, I think is great.
Jason Foster, our guest here on 3 Now. Jason, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Man, thank y'all for having me.
Jason Foster, our guest here, 2007 Walter Payton Award winner, joining us here on the program. Georgia Southern Gardner-Webb coming up on Saturday. And again, Chad Lunsford basically saying, we'll see who – he kind of said what we talked about with Florida State, basically saying we'll see who the starting quarterback is when we run the guy out there to start the game.
And I think people hear that sometimes, and your first reaction is they don't know who their quarterback is. No, they know, you don't know. That's the idea. It's not that I don't think you're trying to figure out a depth chart or kind of what you're going to do, what your plan is a couple of days out. No, you're just, hey, you're going into the season opener. There's some unknowns, and I think you'll see, like with Florida State, I think you'll see a couple of quarterbacks play for Georgia Southern. But Kevin, this schedule, I mean, getting Jason's perspective on it, one of the best to ever do it. I mean, you look, Florida Atlantic, who plays Florida on Saturday in week 2. Then it's at Arkansas. Then it's Louisiana. Then it's Arkansas State. Then later after your bye week, you have Coastal Carolina coming to Statesboro. I didn't even mention that. You have BYU coming to Statesboro. And then you're talking about Appalachian State at the end of the year, maybe snowing up there. But this is an incredible schedule. Challenging, yes, but the national opportunities are there. And I think Georgia Southern is going to be a part of the kind of national storylines one way or the other. A real chance to make a move, maybe even get into the top 25, but you're going to play some teams that that spotlight when you line up is going to be right there.
Are we undervaluing this Eagles team? I know by and large they've been picked down towards the bottom of the East. I know that means Coastal Carolina is very good. App State's very good. But are we undervaluing this team with, again, J.D. King coming back should be a big boost to their offense. Defense, they look very solid. Are we maybe not giving them the the credit they are due.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, chatting with Danny Reed, he was talking about, look, there's just so many good teams in the Sun Belt, especially in the East. When you think about Coastal Carolina, preseason top 25, you think about Appalachian State right there. You think about, I think Georgia State brings back 20 starters. I think Troy brings back 19 or 20 starters. And then you go over in the West, and Louisiana has been one of the national stories for a couple of years now. So yeah, I think people are overlooking Georgia Southern, but I think that's something the Eagles kind of use as motivation. You're a program that's been one of the best programs in the Sun Belt. You've been to the postseason. You've won big games. You have incredible tradition. If people want to overlook you, well, you can do that. But teams that want to win a championship are going to have to come through Statesboro when you look at this schedule. And I think Georgia Southern is motivated. I think Georgia Southern's well prepared. I think they're excited. And look, if people are overlooking you a little bit, I think that's something that can only help motivate you. But yes, are people not fully appreciating the Eagles and what they're capable of? I'm with you. I think that is the case this preseason.
We got a lot of football to talk about still on the show. Mike Griffith, Dog Nation, will join us. Sean Quinn, head coach at Savannah State, will join us coming up here on the program as college football is back in a big way and just a slew of games tonight. More tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We'll look at what we got on the docket tonight when we come back, including some potential upsets out there on the schedule. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you on this Thursday college football. The buffet is just to start. I mean, we barely just got the appetizers in last night, BJ. Now it's like, hey, they're bringing you the bread, maybe a little soup here tonight before we get to the weekend. But some good contests tonight. Actually, some big name teams playing on Thursday night. I mean, I got to say, Tennessee, Ohio State playing on a Thursday night. That doesn't happen very often, much less to start the season on a Thursday night, although Ohio State is starting on the road. But you got some pretty good contests tonight, just to name a few. Boise State, Central Florida, a good one. South Florida, NC State, one that the Wolfpack need to win if they want to kind of put themselves in the spotlight of we're an ACC program trying to rise up and compete in the Atlantic. A lot of Southeast Georgia guys on that NC State program, on that squad as well, BJ. So you've got that. East Carolina, App State in Charlotte as kind of a precursor to the Dukes Mayo Classic with Georgia and Clemson this weekend. That's a good contest. And then you said earlier on the show, Ohio State, Minnesota. Don't overlook that one. PJ Fleck, Minnesota, game one for Ohio State, new quarterback. Is this a chance that Ohio State gets in a dogfight and possibly gets upset?
Well, and that would be, huge news, college football right away, shake up the standings. And how would that potentially impact Georgia, even if they were to lose, or Clemson, if they were to lose? What would the national polls look like? But I think that's a game to keep an eye on. I mean, Kevin, you talked about this, how very rarely do you see the SEC, for example, have a fairly high-profile season opener be a conference game. Well, Ohio State's on the road at Minnesota tonight. You have a young quarterback. I think C.J. Stroud is a redshirt freshman. Of course, you're Ohio State. You have NFL talent all over the field. I think Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson are two of the best receivers in college football. Defensive guys that are going to be first-round picks. But you have to go on the road in week one with a new quarterback. And I think that's, when you start talking about the recipe for an upset, that's what you think about. Is it early in the season? Yes. Are you on the road? Yes. Do you have a new quarterback? Yes. And I think Minnesota, Tanner Morgan at quarterback, Muhammad Ibrahim at running back, they have some really good players, NFL players. Ibrahim had over 1,000 yards rushing last year. So I think you have playmakers. I think that there's a chance this is a lot closer than people think. There are always unknowns. I mean, is that a fair way to put it? That when you have a week one game, even if it's the same team, maybe the confidence collectively or sort of the cohesion isn't fully there. I mean, things get interesting in week one. Now, do you want me to call it? We were saying it there in the break. Hey, are you going to? I don't know that I can do that. I'm not going to come out and say Ohio State will. No, I'm not going to say Ohio State will lose to Minnesota, because then we'll hear that on replay for the next 20 weeks. I know that's what you want. No, but I think it's going to be close. And Ohio State, if you are going to be a national championship contender, you're in the top five. We talk about Georgia's expectations. If you're PJ Fleck, if you're Minnesota, you're looking to pull the upset. Well, if you're Ryan Day and Ohio State, you feel like you are a team that can deal with situations like this, where, you're on the road, you have some young guys, but you're the Ohio State University. You're going to win this game. You're going to win comfortably. So I think that's a fascinating game out of the Big Ten. I mean, are you following me? Do you think there's a chance? Is this close tonight?
I think if you're going to get Ohio State and you're kind of a middle of the pack team, this might be the opportunity to do it. I think certainly the Penn States, maybe a Michigan, some of those teams meet the criteria to potentially do it later in the season. But yeah, if you're a team like Minnesota, I think this would be this is probably the best time you could play Ohio State. New quarterback, first game for him, trying to go out there and get it done. Look, I think that might play into your favor a little bit, but I'm certainly not with you and feeling good about calling the upset. Potentially.
I just said I'm not calling the upset. What I literally just said, you're trying to.
You won't call it, but you're like, oh, this is good. Like off the air, you were like, oh, I think
it's going to be close. That's what I just said here. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm not calling the upset because I don't think the upset's going to happen. Do I think it's going to be close?
Yeah. Conviction on air. That's all I'm saying. Let's move on, because you'll argue this one for the rest of the show. But what about let's move on. NC State, South Florida. Interesting matchup there between those two teams. I think NC State is a team that, with Dave Doeren, one of my favorites, is trying to elevate that program to say we can compete. I mean, and again, BJ, if you want to talk about mysteries that you see throughout college athletics. NC State, 65, 70,000 seat stadium, rabid fan base, loves football, have never been able to continuously put themselves in the upper echelon of the Atlantic Division, which to me has been kind of a mystery, because that is a program that is willing to put the resources in for them to compete, and they just haven't been able to consistently do that. Obviously, you don't want to start off with an opening loss to South Florida.
No, that would surprise me. And USF is rebuilding. Jeff Scott down there, I believe this is his second year rebuilding. But I think you look at NC State. To me, they are the number 2 in the ACC Atlantic. Now they get Clemson in a couple of weeks in Raleigh, but we're a ways away from that. I'm with you. Come out tonight, look the part, win comfortably, and I think that'll validate some of the preseason storylines. I mean, I really like this roster for NC State. You have a quarterback in Leary that I think a lot of people are excited about. You have proven production at running back, wide receiver, defensively, a couple of All-American candidates at linebacker. And you are right. NC State's one of those teams where at the end of the college football season, you're looking around going, they won that one game, but they lost one they shouldn't have. And if they can take care of business in the games where they're supposed to take care of business, I think this is a team that could find itself in the top 20. I think there's a lot of talent, a lot of experience, one of the most experienced teams in the ACC. You think about what they did last season, beat Liberty, beat a Liberty team that beat Coastal Carolina in the bowl game. So, Liberty with Malik Willis, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So can NC State play with Clemson? That's a different question. I think that's a question that we're going to have to wait and see. And Kevin, I'm not calling NC State's beating Clemson either. I'm just saying that NC State, I think in the ACC Atlantic, I would even give them the nod ahead of Boston College as the top contender. We don't quite know what we're going to get out of Florida State. So I think NC State is a number 2 for me in the ACC, but I don't expect them to have any struggles tonight.
Let's hit one more that's going on tonight. I find interesting. We'll hit a couple more on the flip side of this next break, but the debut of the foot on the gas offense at Tennessee against Bowling Green. Now, if it's a cluster against Bowling Green, obviously you know what everybody's going to say. Well, if it looks this bad now, what are you going to do when you're playing an SEC defense? What do you expect to see tonight from the Vols in an opener, debut for Josh Heupel there on Rocky Top?
I mean, one of the more interesting teams in the country when you think about Tennessee, where Tennessee has been, what the expectations are. And look, you're a traditional SEC power. I think we can look at it and say you're rebuilding. It's going to take a couple of years. Fans want to win and want to win right away. I think they'll win comfortably tonight. I mean, Bowling Green 0-5 last year in a shortened season. Tennessee clearly has questions defensively. Lost over 30 players to the transfer portal. But you're still the better team here. And if Tennessee's struggling in this game, I would be very surprised. And that's even with the roster turnover, the limited numbers, the new coaching staff. But you mentioned this. I mean, a couple of the Tennessee guests we've chatted with, I think you're going to see some inconsistencies with the offense. When you're trying to hit the reset button and now it's going to be go, 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 go. And you saw that at UCF and it worked great. But when it doesn't work, I mean, you've talked about this. If you're moving down the field and you're not wasting any time, that's one thing. But if you go 3 and out, all of a sudden your defense is back out there again in a hurry, and that could happen time and time again. So I don't think we'll see that tonight. I think there's reason for modest optimism in Knoxville. I think Coach Heupel brings an impressive resume to town. I think you have options at quarterback. Milton, the Michigan transfer, wins the job. Excited to see what he can do. You have Hooker and Bailey as well. So I think you will probably see multiple quarterbacks tonight. But if they win tonight, is that a step towards contention in the SEC East? No. I think if you're Tennessee, you take it one game at a time, and I think they should feel comfortable with a multi-score win tonight.
We've got more to come. We'll come back and look at some more of these games tonight because there's a lot of them, and a good night for college football getting things started as well. We'll come back. We'll break down some of the rest of these games here. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on this Thursday. Kevin BJ here on 3 and Out. Still some more games. Again, just a host of games tonight on Thursday night. BJ, it wasn't that long ago where you'd have like one game. It was always South Carolina, Arkansas or something like that on Thursday night, and that was it. Then you'd have to wait till
no, it was South Carolina, Mississippi State every season.
You're correct. I apologize. Now there's 13 some odd games tonight, more on Friday. And then obviously you get to Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for the Labor Day weekend with all these games. But several tonight, wanted to get to UCF, Boise State in Orlando tonight. And that is one where now you're hearing grumblings about the Big 12 wanting to expand. UCF, one of those programs potentially that might be a Big 12 member in the not too distant future.
Yeah, that's something. When you think about the Big 12 and when Texas and Oklahoma left to the SEC, there was a lot of speculation. Okay, does that mean the Big 12 is done? And now you look at some of the reports that have come out. You're talking about the remaining members plus potentially Central Florida, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU. I mean, that's a pretty impressive collection of teams. And we'll have to wait and see, what the next kind of progression here is or what the timetable is. But, UCF, I know you and Christian don't like it. Technically, per the NCAA, they won a national championship. They've been a national brand. Houston, you're talking about a Heisman Trophy winner with Andre Ware. You're talking about a number of players to the NFL. Cincinnati in the top 10 right now. You think about BYU, Heisman Trophy national championship there. So those are programs with a lot of tradition. But yeah, I think UCF is one of those teams where they've earned the benefit of the doubt. But what's interesting about this matchup is so is Boise State. When you see these two teams, these are two of, if not the two over the last decade, kind of tone setters for G5 football. I think this is just an awesome game. And Central Florida dealing with the potential of moving to the Big 12, but I think they have high expectations for this year to try to get into the New Year's Six. Remember, Gus Malzahn, this is his debut with the Knights. And you think about Dylan Gabriel, one of the most proficient quarterbacks in the country. So I think this is a fun matchup given the history and kind of what these two programs have meant for college football.
Certainly. We'll get to some picks coming up in the next hour. You've got Coastal Carolina. I know you've been a big fan of them against the Citadel, kind of a tune-up game for them, but they are one of those programs, BJ, walking the tightrope here because their schedule, depending on who you look at, I believe at best on some of these strength of schedule rankings might be like 125 out of 130 teams. We've seen some as low as like 128, 129 in terms of strength of schedule. So they've got to win. They've got to win impressively, and it obviously starts tonight for them.
Well, and I think the spotlight is on Coastal Carolina, right, where it became a national name a year ago in the game against BYU, and there was some talk late, should they get consideration as a college football playoff team? And now you enter the season with expectations. You're ranked in the preseason top 25, and I think a couple of years ago, most college football fans didn't know much about Coastal Carolina. So talking about Grayson McCall, Isaiah Likely, just big-time players all over the field. And I think against the Citadel tonight, Citadel runs that option offense, so that's always a challenge. But I think Coastal Carolina feels like this is a game they should win. And you look ahead, I think they have Kansas coming up. But Coastal Carolina now has to do it as a team that's in the national top 25 and is being talked about around the country.
Yeah, different when you're kind of got the eyeballs on you versus when you're just trying to go out there. I mean, because as we've talked about, BJ, coaches love to play the us versus the world. Nobody thinks we can do it card. Now, I don't know if that's the case for them. They're going to have some folks looking to take them down, especially when they get the Sun Belt play here in 2021. One that I think is very interesting, kind of the precursor to Georgia Clemson because it's in Charlotte, neutral site game, and that's App State against East Carolina. I think probably one of the more underrated games you're going to see. I know East Carolina was not that great last year, but they've been kind of a solid mid-major type program. And obviously App State has been very good over the last handful of years since moving up into the Sun Belt. So interesting kind of, I would call it off the radar game tonight between those two teams.
And that is in Charlotte, as you mentioned. And I think if you're Appalachian State, you're looking around the Sun Belt going, okay, we know about Coastal Carolina. We know about Louisiana. We respect those programs. But look where we are. They've been one of the most consistent teams in the G5 since moving up from the SoCon and the FCS level. And App State has Chase Bryce in at quarterback. who was at Clemson behind Trevor Lawrence, then was at Duke last year. And I think this is a really good team. I think this is a team that probably believes they should be ranked in the preseason top 25. They'll get those opportunities. Of course, Georgia Southern, as we talked with Jason Foster about at the end of the year. And then you look in Coastal Carolina, that's going to be a matchup. It's one of the showcase games in the Sun Belt. But is App State still one of the top teams in the league? They absolutely are. And I think they probably feel like they should be getting some preseason top 25 attention.
Certainly. And again, we'll see how they fare tonight in just a host of great games. We'll see Tennessee in action tonight, Ohio State. BJ called it. Going to go take the L tonight against Minnesota.
All right. Now, hold on. If it happens, you need to come in here and say the same thing. BJ, you called it.
So if it happens, you will own up to saying they could possibly, maybe. I got you. No, it's fine. I would be doing the same thing. Like, if you say it, even if it was half-heartedly, you'll be in here tomorrow saying, I called it. I got it. I got it. We'll get to some picks.
I'm not saying I called it. You're saying I called it. So I see I'm good for tomorrow, because if Minnesota loses or gets blown out, I say, look, man, I said could, but if they win, you said it for me, so I can come in and say, I told you, man. I told you they were going to upset Ohio State. I'm just saying it's a season opening game on the road with a new quarterback against a good team in conference. Do you not agree that those are at least some of the ingredients of a potential close game?
And now that you and I have both said that, it'll probably be 53-10 at the end of the day. But again, we'll see. Should be an interesting matchup in the Big Ten tonight to kind of help get the opening week of college football underway. We'll get to some picks when we come back, because we do have football obviously going on tonight, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. Normally, that's not necessarily the case for this many games on a Thursday night or a Friday night for that matter. We'll get to some of those picks when we come back. Also, Sean Quinn will join us in the final hour of the program. I know they are opening up against Valdosta State, BJ, so we'll look to talk to him about his team and their opener. It's been a while since they've played a season. They get a couple of games in the spring, but kind of looking ahead now at the full season. And also Mike Griffith of Dog Nation will join us coming up in the final hour. We'll look at the very latest with Georgia, BJ, ahead of their showdown with Clemson. And again, that is one that the hype is building by the minute, by the second, leading up to Saturday.
Yeah, and really excited for that one. Really excited for Savannah State, Valdosta State. That's going to be awesome, and happy that those guys get a chance to go out and compete. But feels like we've been talking about Georgia Clemson for so long. I kind of feel like it's already happened. I'm like, oh, the Georgia Clemson game. Yeah, no, it's coming up Saturday night, and going to be a big one for sure.
It's like waiting on Christmas with your children. Has it happened? Nope. Still got a little bit longer. It's almost here. Just be patient. We've got another hour to go here on 3 and Out. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. Mike Griffith will join us final hour. Sean Quinn joins us in the final hour of the program as well. We're streaming live ESPNCoastal.com, or you can catch us Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Hour 3 coming up next here on 3 and Out. Great to be here, final hour. 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network as we look at a host of games coming up this weekend. BJ, we're going to get your picks. We'll get my picks as well as we head into the weekend, just overloaded with college football all weekend long. Let's start with one, Boise State and Central Florida. Central Florida, a 6.5-point favorite in this one.
Two really good programs, two really good teams, as we've talked about. Now, Boise State, new coaching staff. You talk about UCF, new coaching staff. So maybe some unknowns there. I think some of that balances out. I probably would pick UCF to win straight up, but if you're giving me almost a touchdown, 6.5 points, I will take Boise State. I think both teams are relatively even against similar circumstances. I understand it's in Orlando, but this should be a great football game, by the way, but I will take Boise State with the points.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Again, I think you got Ohio State, Minnesota out there, some other ones, but Boise State, Central Florida, one you don't want to overlook. Give me Central Florida. I will take them laying the 6.5. North Carolina and Virginia Tech. North Carolina, a 4.5-point favorite in this one.
Yeah, and of course the factor here is that you're playing on a Friday night prime time in Blacksburg, Lane Stadium, one of the most electric atmospheres in all of college football, one of the toughest places to play in all of college football. But I will say this, if everybody's saying, hey, North Carolina's a top 10 team, maybe could be in the mix for playoff consideration. Could they beat Clemson if they match up in the ACC championship? If you're telling me you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country, one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the country in Sam Howell, even though it's tough and even though it's a really difficult place to play, I think you have to find a way to win this one. And I think if you win it, it's not unreasonable to think they could win by 7-10 points. And even maybe the game's a lot closer than that throughout. I have no doubt Virginia Tech will be fired up. But if this team and this quarterback are as good as we think they are, I think they win and they cover. So give me North Carolina.
Yeah, I think North Carolina, to me, is the team everybody's looking at in the ACC to say, are they legit? And you can get big points for that by going on the road and getting a win over Virginia Tech. I think Sam Howell, again, has got the mojo behind him. A lot of people say maybe a dark horse Heisman candidate. Give me North Carolina even laying the points. And for the 4.5, I will take them to win. Interesting game coming up. We'll have it for you Saturday, 11:30 with the coverage. Penn State at Wisconsin, top 20 matchup out of the Big Ten.
And I'm surprised that Penn State's getting 5.5. I understand Wisconsin is, higher in the polls by a slim margin, but I think you're going to have a defense-dominated game, low scoring. Could be a game that's somewhere like 17-13 in the fourth quarter. So Penn State having to win in Madison is tough, but I do think it'll be close. I like Penn State if you're giving me 5.5 points, Kevin.
I like Penn State to win straight up, but I certainly like them if you're going to give me 5.5 on top of that. I really think Penn State's got something special there in store this year. I thought last year was kind of an abomination where they had some bad things happen early, and I think just the attitude, the mental aspect of the team just kind of went away as the season went on and things continued to go south. Certainly that's going to happen in a COVID year like they had last year. I think this team is better. Give me Penn State. I like them to win straight up, but I'll take the 5.5 if you're going to give it to me. Army is at Georgia State. Georgia State, 2 points, the favorite here in this one.
I expect this to be a really good game, a really good game. And I was in Atlanta a couple of years ago when they played 28-21, and Georgia State won that one, some turnovers late. I think early in the season, especially maybe having that running game at Army, that option might be an advantage. But I think this is going to be a fun game. Georgia State is a team to watch, but I will take Army. Wouldn't be surprised at any outcome, but I will take Army.
Yeah, I'm going to take Georgia State minus the 2 because it's at home. I think Army, very good team. I'll probably feel bad about this pick come Saturday night when it's all said and done, but I will take Georgia State minus the 2 at home, beating Army, which would be a big win for the Panthers to get their season started. Here's one that gets tricky, BJ. Number 1 Alabama against number 14 Miami. This one is in Atlanta. Bama giving 19.5. So Miami getting nearly 3 touchdowns in this one. Where do you go?
And that feels like a lot, right? You're talking about a top 15 Miami team. It's not in Tuscaloosa. It's in Atlanta. And Alabama's laying 19.5. first glance, you think, oh, Miami for sure. And I want to be clear here. I don't think Miami's going to lose this game in a fashion where it's, 20-0, then 28-7, then 35-10, then 4. I think this is going to be fairly close for a while. Miami's really good, and De'Aaron King is a star, and I think you have a good team that is capable of playing with Alabama. But what does playing with Alabama mean? I mean, you go back to last year, the team that was the first team out of the college football playoff, Texas A&M, lost to Alabama by 28 points. And they were the first team out of the playoff. Now, I understand new players for Alabama, some changes, but I'm going to take Alabama, even laying the points. But the situation I'm seeing is, maybe it's 38, 23 in the fourth quarter or something like that. It's been relatively competitive, and Alabama gets a late touchdown. I think this game's going to be compelling for a while, but just given what Alabama's done on the big stage, in the playoff against the top teams in the SEC, until I see something else, I got to go with Alabama.
Yeah, I will lay 19.5. I feel bad. Like, that's one of those on the face, BJ. You're like, I'm just going to give up 19.5 points. But yeah, it's Alabama. Again, if it's a 2-touchdown game and Alabama tacks one on in the fourth quarter, you win. I'm going to go Alabama minus 19.5 in this as well. Louisiana and Texas in Austin, 23 versus number 21. Texas, though, an 8-point favorite at home over the Raging Cajuns.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised at that. I'm taking Louisiana. I think that what they did in Ames against Iowa State last season will only give them extra confidence in this game. And Louisiana is one of those teams stylistically where even if you beat them, they normally don't get blown out because they're going to run the football. And they have a quarterback who doesn't make mistakes. So you think about Louisiana being really good along the offensive line, having I believe a fifth-year senior at quarterback in Levi Lewis. I don't think the stage is going to be too much. I think they're going to kind of limit the volatility of a game where you might have a traditional kind of Big 12, throw it all over the place kind of contest. I'm surprised at that line. I will take Louisiana and feel very good about it.
I think they expect to win, too. I think that's the difference. Sometimes like, hey, man, I think we can pull the upset. No, they think they can win the game. I'm going to go Louisiana, lay the 8 as well. You said don't even call it an upset if it happens. New regime there for Texas could be ripe for Louisiana to get that win. LSU at UCLA. LSU laying 3 points on the road. LSU number 16, UCLA coming off having played already and a big win over Hawaii last week.
Yeah, and obviously our thoughts and prayers with the folks in Louisiana. When you think about the Raging Cajuns and the Tigers, what they've dealt with, and obviously had to see and overcome this week. But I think LSU wins this game. I feel good laying the 3. UCLA did look really good against Hawaii. They did, but I think that's a different type opponent going from a Hawaii to LSU. And I think LSU along the defensive line is a lot better than people think. They have a lot of experience back along the offensive line. This is a big game for Chip Kelly and UCLA. I don't know how many of those they've had, whereas big games, spotlight environments are a regular thing for LSU. I will take LSU and lay the 3 points.
Teams improve the most. They say what? Week 1 to week 2. How much does having played a game, even if it was against Hawaii, help UCLA out? What happened week 1 last year with LSU, BJ?
You got Mike Leach. I got it. You give up 800 yards of offense or whatever it was. So you taking UCLA?
They came out and laid an egg. Talk of Jimbo getting $9 million because they're worried there might be an opening at LSU at the end of the year. I'm taking UCLA. Give me 3 points. I'm taking UCLA there on the West Coast. Notre Dame, number 9, at Florida State in Tallahassee. Obviously, Bobby Bowden going to be all over that stadium. Probably an emotional scene there in Tallahassee as they kind of unveil all the tributes to Bobby Bowden. First home game, obviously, there since all that happened. 7.5-point favorite is Notre Dame going in this game. This one a Sunday night game in Tallahassee.
This is really hard to get a feel for. I mean, it really is because, not only is it a Sunday night, the emotion you reference with Coach Bowden, you think about, 2 programs that know each other fairly well, played last season, and it was competitive for a while in South Bend. But I think Florida State's hard to kind of pick because so much of their team has come via the transfer portal. And you have a lot of young, talented players, of course, but is it going to be McKenzie Milton? Is it going to be Jordan Travis? Your defense has 5 or 6 transfers that are going to start. Still a young team largely, and I think Notre Dame, even though they have to replace a lot, including Ian Book, has been effective and been comfortable in these type atmospheres more than Florida State. I think this game is going to be close and competitive. I do, but you're only talking about a touchdown plus. So, I mean, it could be a 3-point game, like you said, and then a touchdown. I think there are just so many questions for Florida State. Nothing would surprise me. I would not be surprised if Florida State wins, but I think there are more questions with Florida State, more answers with Notre Dame. I will take Notre Dame and lay the points.
100% agree with that assessment. More questions than answers. The other team, more answers than questions. I will take Notre Dame and lay the 7.5 there, even though it's in a very hostile place to play in Doak Campbell Stadium. Monday night in Atlanta, Ole Miss and Louisville. Very solid game. Again, one that's not getting talked about very much, BJ, here in this opening weekend of college football. Ole Miss laying 10 to the Cardinals.
That feels like a lot, doesn't it? I mean, when you first see that, you're like, wait a second. Louisville, now Louisville had a bit of a disappointing season. You do bring back Malik Cunningham, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think defensively, you got to take some steps forward. I think this line is about Matt Corral. You think about Lane Kiffin, Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator, Matt Corral, that offense, Jerrion Ealy last year, put up like 50 against Alabama, put up 40 against Florida. You saw Matt Corral. I mean, they put up 40 in a game where Matt Corral threw 5 picks, I think, against LSU. So I think this offense is going to score. Both teams are looking for major improvement defensively. I think I would take the over, whatever that is. But I think this line's about Matt Corral, and I think I'm okay with it. I think I will lay the 10 points and take Ole Miss.
I'm sorry, your pick in this one to me is all about, do you think Louisville can score? If you think they can score and win in a shootout, you go with it. And can they outscore Ole Miss? 10 makes me a little nervous because, again, everybody's like, Ole Miss defense going to be better. I'm going to take Louisville giving me 10. I don't think they're going to win. But I do think you're looking at like a 49-42 type ball game. And if that's the case, I win. Give me my money. Give me my money. I cover the spread. I think Louisville covers, but they don't win on Monday night. That brings us to Saturday night, Clemson and Georgia. Clemson number 3, Georgia number 5. Clemson laying 3 points. This is not in Clemson. It's in Charlotte, neutral site game. Who you got, BJ?
About ready for this one. And we're all excited, and for good reason. The defensive lines, the quarterbacks in this game that competed against each other in high school, Clemson being that standard. They've made a half dozen consecutive playoff appearances. Georgia trying to kind of be affirmed on that same level. And in Charlotte, it's going to be awesome. I wrote a preview on southernpigskin.com, made my pick. I picked Clemson by 4. So I think I got to go with that and stick with it. I'm going to take Clemson, and I think this is going to be a great ball game. I think this is going to be competitive. I think it's going to be fascinating football at the line of scrimmage. So many great players on both offensive and defensive lines. I think Clemson, is a little more accustomed to kind of playing with the expectations and the hype. And think about this too. Clemson lost in a fairly convincing fashion in their last game. It's hard for me to envision a program like Clemson with the expectations they have losing 2 games in a row. When's the last time that's happened, even from season to season? So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. No outcome would surprise me. Georgia can clearly win, but given that I took Clemson by 4 in my preview, I will take Clemson and lay the points.
Fair assessment, given the schedule they have remaining. Georgia wants this game. Clemson needs this game. Is that fair? To kind of validate themselves the rest of the way. I think this is going to be back and forth. It is going to be the game that everybody thought it was going to be. Again, usually you start overhyping stuff. It's the greatest opener of all time. Alabama waxed the floor with Florida State. You get some of these games that are overhyped and they don't deliver. I think this one's going to deliver. At the end of the day, I think Clemson needs it a little bit more. And I'm going to take them, man. If I could push, I would. But if I have to do it, Clemson minus the 3, I think it's going to be a 3-point ball game or so. I will take Clemson minus 3 in that ball game. It's going to be just, that'll be one of those where BJ about 5:00 in the afternoon on Saturday, I'm going to sit there and go, it's still not 7:30 yet? Like, come on. I'm going to get here already. At the end of the day, that's just our quick look at our picks. We've got more to come here at 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here at 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you are making us a part of your day. College football is back this weekend. Our next guest, probably one of the most excited folks to be able to say that. He's the head football coach, Savannah State Tigers. Sean Quinn joins us. Coach, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing good, guys. How about you guys? Everybody doing good this morning, afternoon, whatever time of day, year it is, but ready to go. I got my Booyah shirt on. And I've got my Holy City Angels Charleston. So I got the minor league theme going this afternoon. So I'm just a minor league coach in a JV squad, and we're just getting ready to play a varsity team. So
well, Coach, how's the preparation? Because, again, I know in the spring you played a couple of games where it's like, hey, let's try to go and make it happen. This is actually, schedule. You're working towards it. Has this been a different feel? And what's the kind of the atmosphere now amongst your team knowing like, hey, this is – all right, the schedule's here. We're actually going to play this thing here in 2021 and get it all in here.
Well, it's like for real. It's like, you go play golf and you get mulligans at somebody's tournament to raise money, and then you actually got to go play for real and you don't have mulligans. So, it's been good. I mean, it's been a challenge to say the least, and every year is a challenge. And we got a new team, a lot of young players, and it's been good. The guys know that we have a quality opponent and somebody that's won a lot of games and who we're trying to emulate from a athletic department and a program. And in the Division II world, they're Clemson or Alabama. And, obviously, at some point we would like to be in that stratosphere, and we're just, we're still learning how to win, and they've got a long-standing tradition of winning there. So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun, great atmosphere, and quality opponent. So it's been good preparation to this point.
What's the momentum like? You guys, as Kevin said, getting to practice, getting to prepare for an actual opponent, a big showcase game. What's this week been like, and what's the excitement level like?
I think the guys are really excited. I think they're tired of hitting each other. We've been on like ad nauseum for 2 years hitting each other. We've had very little interaction with anybody else. So I think they're excited to play somebody else and you just, get into the season. And, we got a really tough schedule, starting with obviously as good a team in Division II. So, but they've been excited, man. And their enthusiasm keeps you going because, there's been a lot of crazy stuff out there in the world going on. And so to get out, my favorite part of the day is when I go out to that football field and get to work with the guys and then riding the causeway home late at night. And then I just enjoy the players there. In fact, a couple of them were just in here visiting with me, and they're just a fun bunch to be around, and they keep you young. That's for sure.
Does it feel like game week finally for you? I know there's been a feel to it for, working in the spring, but does it finally feel like game week with the preparations you guys are doing with obviously installing and making sure your guys know what the game plan is for Saturday?
Yeah, it is. Definitely. Thursdays is a kind of a light day. Actually, we're a little bit like Oregon. Fridays is a heavier day for us. So today was a good, solid day. And it's closer and closer. Everybody says, are you ready to play? And I said, nope, we won't be ready till 7 p.m. on Saturday. Well, right up until then, we'll still got work to be done. And as a football coach, especially on defense, on offense, I said, all they got to do is punt. If worse comes to worse, on defense, it's a whole different ball of yarn. So, and as a head coach too, there's just a lot of other hats we're wearing, and try to make sure the guys are fed right, hydrated right, get enough sleep, doing their schoolwork. And so it's a challenge every day, but I really enjoy it. And obviously, Valdosta State, like I said, they're the gold standard, and we're trying to get to a point where we can be competitive with teams like that.
Coach, talk about D'Angelo Durham and what your expectations are for him this season.
To run the heck out of the football, run like a scalded dog, a runaway train, whatever the word you want to use, and run like the wind. I grew up and I don't want to date myself too much here, late 80s, early 90s, and there was a guy named Eric Dickerson who had that kind of that high running style with the high knees. And D'Angelo reminds me of Eric Dickerson. He likes to think he's even better looking than Eric Dickerson was, but he runs really good, and I expect him to run the heck out of the football. And with anything though, we're going to have a bunch of guys play tailback just like we do at every position, because he can't shoulder the load the entire season. And we've got some other good running backs. And so, but he's a leader in the clubhouse. He's a leader in the locker room, and he does a great job on the field. And I think, we'll see where the cards fall. But if he has the kind of year, he's a lot of attention. NFL teams have come in here, and he has the measurables. They like his film. He's got to have a great year, of course. But I think he'll have a chance to be a guy who'll be highly considered if he has the kind of year that he and I envision. But he's got to stay healthy, and he's got to get better. He's not there yet by any means.
Sean Quinn joining us here, head football coach at Savannah State. Coach, you're a defensive guy. how do you slow down Valdosta State? I know as a spread team last time they played, they were 10-0 regular season, lost in the playoffs. But I was reading something about it today. They haven't played a game in 600 and some odd days. But how do you attack that team offensively with what they like to do with that air raid?
Well, first of all, you got to try to somehow make them one-dimensional. They actually run the ball much better than people realize, and that's really a strength of theirs. Is stopping the run and then create some turnovers. You got to do that. I mean, any good team you play, if you're going to have opportunity to win, you got to win the turnover battle. And, that's not glitzy. That's not glam. It's not RPOs. It's not something, that Kirk Herbstreit's saying on ESPN that's going to win. Those are the tried and true things. And I know Kirk would probably say the same thing. But the turnover margin, Jesse Palmer may want to RPO everybody, but just winning the turnover margin and trying to make sure you can defend the run and then limit the big plays. And for us, it's going to be a huge crowd. It's a loud place. The stadium's right on you. We got to sustain early and they'll try to hit us with some shots and get the crowd into it. And we got to do a good job early on of just staying steady and playing good football and make it a 4-quarter game. Cause a lot of their games are out of hand at halftime, and that's kind of generally their MO. They blow people out at halftime. They've got everybody, they've emptied the benches. So we got to somehow get this thing in the 4th quarter and see what happens.
Are there elements of the game that are more important, that are more impactful when it's game one, and there are some unknowns? Are there parts of kind of the game that mean more in week one than maybe later in the season?
Yeah, I just think for me, and I think as a coach, how are your new players going to react when the lights are on? Because we are counting on a lot of new guys, even though we've got some veteran group of guys coming back. We've got a lot of guys in the 2 deep have never played a snap before. How are they going to react when the lights come on and it's for real? Like, we've got a young guy from a local player, Jordan Clark from Richmond Hill. He's had a phenomenal camp, been a heck of a player for us. I think he's going to be a gamer. But, when we get out there and the crowd and everything gets going and he gets hit, how's he going to react? And is he going to, play at the same level? And to me, that's the biggest thing. And then the second part of that would be how much we can improve from week 1 to week 2, because there'll be some mistakes that we got to get corrected and some things we got to get better at. And this thing's kind of a build up to the end of the year. Each week you want to keep getting better. But for me, just how do the new players react under fire? And then how much better can we continue to get each and every week? I've seen us improve in camp, and we still got a long way to go.
Sean Quinn joining us here on 3 and Out. Coach Christian said you had a little something for me. I know you've been trying to play this game I feel like you and I have been talking about this for 2 years, probably literally trying to play this game. But he said, hey, you want to, I am the VSU alum. Look, I've played it right down the middle with you, but
I appreciate that.
What you got?
Well, we've been talking about this game about as long as we have, as Christian finally getting a date, hopefully. So, I mean, it's been 2 years of that and 2 years of this. So, but, you got bragging rights, man. We're just, like I said, we're junior varsity and we're trying to get to be a varsity team like those guys. And, I got nothing but respect for Gary and the staff down there. So I'm not going to, I'm not one to chum the waters and say anything about an opponent. I have been known to say a thing or two to the other head coach during a game or in warmups, but that's a whole nother dumb Irish move that I may do. But these guys, I got a lot of respect for. And there was a coach real quickly 2 years ago, we played in our league that he and I didn't exchange Christmas cards. We exchanged some short letter vocab words to each other, but no Christmas cards. So, for me, I'm excited just to see where we're at. And I know we got a long way to go. But I think when it's all said and done, hopefully when this season ends, we'll say, hey man, we got a lot out of this football team, and it's just good. And just in general, I think people are sick of all the other stuff that's been going on and just want to go watch a ball game, see college football on a Saturday, tailgate. And I'm excited for people to get to do that. I'm excited for our fans, their fans, for just college football in general to get going and have a real season again with fans in the stands and, the way it's supposed to be in the fall. So I think if you talk to every coach in America, they're just excited about that. And I'm going to be just really humble on this one because, bro, you got the airwaves and I'm just over here trying to get together and get a stop on 4th down. So.
No, man. Look, I get it. I want you guys to do well. Obviously, I mean, we have you on all the time, so I'm excited to see.
What is your definition of well? I'm curious of what that is.
What is your definition of well?
Well, always you want to win. If we're playing cards, I want to take all the money in your pocket. So everybody's got a different definition. This isn't like T-ball where everybody gets a trophy. There's a winner and loser in this thing. So you always want to come out on the winning side each and every week, regardless of who you play.
Well, look, just from my standpoint, I will say this. Look, obviously, it's a tough matchup for you guys because you're playing a team that is obviously they played in a place called Titletown, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But they got a new quarterback that's going to play. So be interesting to see kind of how he does. I know, as you said, I think that is kind of the misnomer. Back when I was there and Chris Hatcher was bringing the air raid in, he said, look, everybody says we throw it around. And, he had Dusty Bonner at the time, and rightfully so, but he's like, we'd run the ball too. And reading up on it, they got two kids that, have run for 1,000 yards in a season before. So obviously I think that'll be a challenge for you, but you're also playing a team that hadn't played in 2 years, man. So I was like, I know you've talked about rust of just going out and played. The team hadn't played in 600 some odd days. So I think that might be an advantage for you because all they've played is against each other for 2 years.
What office are you running for, by the way? I was getting ready to endorse you there with your answer, but all joking aside, no, they're going to be good. It'll be a good challenge, man. And that's why you get in coaching. You don't want to go play people that aren't very good. And each week you want to play the best teams you can get on your schedule. And I know when I was at Tennessee and LSU, I always enjoyed going and playing the Alabamas and the Clemsons of the world and those type of folks. So it's the same thing. You enjoy the opportunity to go compete and see how good we can be. So it'll be fun, man. And hopefully our fans will show up and we'll have a great crowd. And it'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully next week we can have some more laughs about this and you and I will still be on speaking terms.
Hey, I'll always talk to you. Pull off the upset, Coach. I would love to see if it happens. Hey, we're going to have you on the show, and you can let me have it either way. I'm telling you what.
No. We're excited to play, and I'll leave it at that. And I appreciate what you guys have done for us, man. You've given us a lot of opportunity to talk about our team and just what we're doing here. And, man, that means the world to us. And, folks out there, we just want to make Savannah people proud and get our program back on the map and, eventually get to this thing where we can be one of the top teams in Division II. We got a long way to go. We're like riding a bike. We got training wheels right now, but eventually we'll get where we can hold the handlebars and Mom won't have to be behind us while we ride. So, but we're getting there step by step.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on, Coach. Thanks so much, and best of luck, seriously, to you guys on Saturday. And I always enjoy having you on and talking to you.
You too, guys. A lot of fun. Appreciate you guys. Go Tigers. We'll see you soon.
Appreciate it. Sean Quinn joining us here on 3 and Out, as they have Valdosta State coming up on Saturday there in Valdosta. And again, I know that'll be two programs just excited about playing, man. He's played a couple games in the spring. And as I said, reading up about this game, Valdosta hasn't played for 2 years, and their last game was a loss in the playoffs. So obviously there's been a 2-year bitter taste in their mouth as well. So should be a good one there on Saturday night. We got more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We'll look to chat with Mike Griffith very shortly here on the program. Kind of ran over there with Sean Quinn, but that's fine. I always enjoy talking football with him. Braves tonight in Colorado looking to bounce back. No help by the Washington Nationals, who were winning by 3 earlier today and lost it in the 8th inning to the Phillies. So the Phillies get a half game back on the Braves there as well. So you need some good baseball coming up. Braves did say, BJ, not going to pitch Drew Smiley in Colorado, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And Tukey Toussaint goes tonight. He's really done a nice job. A 3.60 ERA. Now, he's had a couple of innings where it's gotten away from him, but I think he's helped stabilize the back end of the rotation. Big start tonight, especially given what Philadelphia is doing. And I ruined that. I thought it was a doubleheader, 7 innings. So I sent you a message in the chat at the end of the 7th and said, oh, man, the Nationals beat the – Nope. Nope. So that's on me. But I think that you want to keep the ball down, right? That's always key, but when you're playing in Denver, you want to keep the ball down. And if you can hold the Rockies to a couple of runs, I mean, their pitching has not been very good. I think the Braves will be in a good spot.
We're talking Georgia football, and we come back with Mike Griffith of Dog Nation. He steps in next here on 3 and Out. Georgia and Clemson, it's almost here. Coming up Saturday night in Charlotte. Joining us here to help break it down and more from Dog Nation, Mike Griffith joins us here on 3 and Out. Mike, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great, guys. How are you?
Doing fantastic. I know a lot of folks were talking earlier about the contact tracing around the Georgia program after Ron Corson tested positive. What can you tell us about that? Is that of any concern for Georgia with a fairly high vaccination rate at this point?
Well, I mean, there's always concern anytime there's a possibility you can lose anybody on your team, and it's just such an unknown. It's not like the NFL. We don't have an injury report or an availability report. So yeah, there are some concerns. But I've been told JT Daniels is one guy that is vaccinated. So, the quarterback will be there, and he's probably the most important person on the team. But there's obviously concerns. I mean, look, guys, we can't stick our head in the sand. We're living in a COVID world. And, it can happen to anybody. It can happen to football players, head trainers, parents, children. This is a time we have to just be very careful and respectful of one another. And to me, this isn't a political issue. It's a scientific issue. But I'll leave that one to the experts, as they say. From an availability standpoint, I think knowing that Tyke Smith, the safety, the star, I should say, the extra defensive back, him being out, that's big news. We've known that for a while. Darnell Washington, impact player at tight end, another big absence for Georgia. But there is some talk about Clemson perhaps having a defensive tackle with COVID issues. Dabo wouldn't answer that question last night. Unfortunate, though, we got to talk about this whole COVID thing, but it's an ugly thing that's still plaguing our society.
And Mike, you look ahead to the game on Saturday night. I mean, where do you begin when you try to break it all down? What must Georgia do if they're going to win Saturday night?
Well, I think it's which team can get the most balance, with the run game. And, I do think Clemson has the potential to be more explosive and take advantage of those young Georgia cornerbacks. They have some big, tall, long receivers. But then again, Georgia has a ferocious pass rush. And DJ Uiagalelei has not seen a pass rush like this, nor has he been in a game like this. So, but to me, the reason I like Georgia to win this game is because I think Georgia's going to be able to run the ball. I think everybody's forgotten that Trey Sermon ran for 191 yards for the Ohio State last year. And, Clemson brings everybody back. But if it's the same guys that gave up 190 yards rushing to one player and 254 in the game, that may not be such a bad thing. So I think Georgia's ability to have balance is going to make a difference in this game. Whereas I think Clemson's going to be more one-dimensional, rely more on those screens, getting the ball outside, and then it's going to be up to the Georgia defense to make plays in space.
Mike, when you talk about the Clemson run game, how much does Georgia expect DJ Uiagalelei to be a part of the running game? I know he's big, but he's still known for having a strong arm. How much do they expect to see him kind of as a part of the run game?
Probably not much, considering it's the first game of the season, and Clemson could lose this and still win a national title. And as I said, I think the focus for both of these teams is going to be keeping their quarterback upright. DJ's got decent mobility, but he's not Justin Fields. He's not a guy that's going to run for 50 or 60 yards a game. So, I think the real key is DJ's ability to get the ball out in space, screen passes, a little RPO game. And Georgia's going to challenge that with pressure. And again, comes down to that open field. Guys like Lewis Seen, guys like Latavius Greeney, Nakobe Deans, Quay Walkers. We're going to find out if these guys are future NFL stars.
Georgia's offensive line, is there a settled depth chart, or are there still a couple of spots where there are some unknowns entering the weekend?
We may have lost Mike Griffith there on the program as we were talking Georgia Clemson with him. We'll try to see if we can get him back here in just a couple of moments on the show, as we may just have a little bit of a technical hookup with him. But your thoughts there, BJ, if it's not settled, how concerning is that for Georgia?
Well, I think it's a really good group. You're kind of waiting and seeing with Warren Erickson, I believe, to a certain extent, but I think it's a really good offensive line. And I think Mike's right when you talk about the matchup of Georgia's offensive line, Clemson's defensive line. Whoever wins there is really going to have the advantage in terms of dictating tempo and having that offensive balance Mike was talking about, because that is going to be key for all the talk of could we see, JT and DJ both throw for 400 yards? Maybe, but you're going to have to run the ball, especially in the red zone. So I think what we see at the line of scrimmage is going to really go a long way towards determining who wins.
And certainly you talked about DJU in the run game. How much do you look at that? Not maybe a mobile guy, but a guy that nevertheless, BJ is 240, 250 pounds. You get in short yardage situations, could be certainly a factor.
I think he can keep Georgia off balance, and yeah, you're not going to see him run, 15 times, but a couple of times maybe just to slow down that pass rush potentially. I think you could see that, but he's a very, very dynamic player. We've heard a couple of folks say, right, the strongest arm people at Clemson have ever seen, and you saw him throw for 439 yards, the most ever at Notre Dame Stadium last year in that top 5 game. So the spotlight's going to be on the line of scrimmage, but also these two quarterbacks for sure.
Certainly. I believe we will have Mike Griffith back here momentarily here on the show. It looks like we may have reestablished a line with him. And let me see if we can get him back up here on the show. Mike, welcome back to the show. When we lost you, we were asking about the Georgia offensive line and if they're settled on that depth chart there and they feel good about the 5 they're running out there, or is that going to be a game time decision?
Yeah, no, I think Cedric Van Pran is going to get his first start at center, and anytime a kid makes his first start, there's a question, but he was the number 1 center in the nation in the 2020 class, and then he's flanked by Justin Schaefer, one of those super seniors that got an extra year of eligibility via COVID. And on the other side, I believe Tate Ratledge, real good run blocker. We'll see how he does against the pass rush. Right tackle Warren McClendon was a freshman All-American. Left tackle Jamari Salyer. Now this line will get shaken up as the year goes on, as Broderick Jones and Amarius Mims grow into their roles and gain some experience. But I think that's the lineup you go with, and I think Kirby feels pretty good about it.
A lot of talk about the quarterbacks, the defensive fronts, obviously the offensive lines. Could special teams be a real asset for Georgia Saturday night?
Could be an asset for either team. It's always an intangible. You can get a spark out of that. You can get momentum out of that. I think Clemson is a team that could come from behind easier than Georgia could, again, because I think Clemson is more dynamic on the perimeter. I think they have better wide receivers, and I think they have a better secondary than Georgia. That makes it a little bit harder for JT. I think JT Daniels has to rely more on a run, a play-action game, picking his spots. I think Clemson goes in knowing they're not going to generate any run game between the tackles, so they're going to use a screen game on the perimeter, high percentage passes to try to control the ball and neutralize the rush, and then they'll pick their spots to go downfield.
Mike Griffith joining us here on 3 and Out. And Mike, you look at the kind of the hype and build up around this game, and maybe this is just the playoff era we're in, but interesting already kind of how the interpretation is of what it means for each team, regardless of the outcome. How do you think that plays into this one, where it's obviously a huge game that both teams want to win, but it may not necessarily be the end-all, be-all at the end of the day, either way it goes?
You're right. It's not. The more important thing for both teams is to keep their quarterbacks healthy. Either one of these or both of these teams could lose this game and still run the table and win the national title, provided that they keep their starting quarterback healthy. Conversely, if you win the game but lose your starting quarterback, that could prevent you from winning a national title. So job number 1 for both of these teams is to keep their quarterbacks clean, and I think that's why it's going to be a little lower scoring game than maybe some people think.
End of the day, so much hype, so much attention. Do you think this lives up to it and ends up being a 1-score game maybe that comes down to the finish?
I do, because I think these are both great coaches. These are 2 of the 3 winningest active coaches when you look at winning percentages in college football, right? Dabo's number 1. He wins at over an 80% clip. Nick Saban's 2. There's a coach at Buffalo that's 3, but Kirby's 4, right? So these are the 3 winningest active Power 5 coaches, and for a reason. Really good staff. I really like Clemson. I like their staff. I like Dabo a lot. I just feel like they're not going to be able to run the ball, and I feel like Georgia has the more experienced quarterback in JT Daniels. This is a guy, he's got the scars to prove it. He was out there at USC on not a very good team, played in front of 100,000 at Texas, played Notre Dame. He's been there and done it. back when he should have been a senior in high school. And then even last year, I mean, hey, he got beat up against Cincinnati and Mississippi State. So JT's shown you he can do it in the clutch under pressure. DJU, this is only his third start, so I give Georgia an advantage there as well.
Mike Griffith, Dog Nation, our guest here on 3 and Out. Mike, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
You bet, guys. Have a great weekend.
Will do. And Mike Griffith joining us here, Georgia Clemson. BJ, we are almost there to get into this game and all about the quarterback play. And he says he thinks it's going to live up to the hype. And I think I mentioned earlier in the show, you hope a game like this does, with as much talk about the great players, with what's potentially out there in front of both of these teams. You hope that it lives up to everything we've kind of built it up to be at this point.
No, and I agree with Mike and you. I think it will. And it was a great point about the coaching staffs. 2 great head coaches, 2 great coaching staffs. We've been looking forward to it, and I think it's going to live up to the hype on Saturday night.
And again, appreciate Mike Griffith joining us here on 3 and Out. We've got so much more to come here on 3 and Out. A lot of football talk to speak to as we get ready for the first big weekend of college football. You got Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Monday and Sunday and Monday. Full of football, and we're going to break it all down for you here on 3 and Out. If you miss any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, go to our YouTube page, subscribe there, get all the notifications when we go live each day for the show, and you can watch us online and, of course, get the archive version of 3 and Out there each and every day. We'll see you soon here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio.